Hi people, welcome to my studio. This is my home and I have studios outside, but I just want you to see a little bit of what's in here. I've been painting for, oh golly, years and years and years. My first solo exhibit was 1959, so you know that's been a long time. And my work has always been between social commentary and nature. I go back and forth. I've just had a need for both of them. This particular painting that is right here is part of a series that I did for women in the Bible, women and plants of the Bible. And it came about when I was in Ojai, and I walked by a biblical garden at a church, and I photographed the plants at that time, and each plant had a passage from the Bible. So I went back at different times during the year, photographed them, and I was just going to do the plants. And then a mentor, rabbi friend of mine said, "Pat, why don't you do the women of the Bible to go with the plants of the Bible?" So I did a lot of research, which was very exciting, and came up with a whole series. This was one before I did the women, but this is called the white broom bush. And it was in the desert in biblical times. And this particular person is the prophet that's walking through the desert and taking shelter under the shade of a white broom bush. And while he fell asleep, an angel came with a jug of water and a crumb, some piece of bread, whatever. It could be a homeless person taking shelter. So this was one of the ones that I did. And it's an acrylic painting, and I work with many layers. I started out as a watercolorist, and I guess I've used that technique in my canvases as well. So I start out with layers, and then I get layer over layer. And the other paintings are put away, but they have been more with the women of the Bible. As we move around the room, we come to a painting that I did in Japan in an exchange show more recently in the 2000s, and I call this one the Red Tree. I was there with a group and it was just absolutely wonderful. We had several museum shows in southern Japan, and the colors at that time of the year in the fall were absolutely marvelous. Moving along, you'll see some sculpture. I was also doing a lot of sculpture in the 80s, and the one you see there is one that I liked. Particularly, I would work with clay, and then I would work with, have it cast in bronze, and then I would work on finishing the work all myself. So I did a whole series of earth-like figures, and I worked out in the garden with some of them where I could actually melt the clay, or I worked in wax, sheets of wax, both ways. These were wax, and I've done a lot from nature and also figurative pieces. I was fortunate enough to have a residency at an art colony in Costa Rica, and it was absolutely marvelous. There were just 25 acres where I could roam around and get involved with nature and whatnot. And this is the jungle area there with the heliconia, and it was a wonderful feeling. I loved it. So a lot of my work has been from travels, different places that I've gone to that have inspired me. I've also been spending a lot of time in Arizona, and this is a painting that I did in a place called Hacienda, where it was very woodsy and with streams, and you could go through on a 5-mile hike and get all kinds of interesting shots. So I take a lot of photographs and that I can work with when I get home, and then turn them into paintings. I was using slides. It was a wonderful material for me at the time, because then I could change the scale, I could take parts of it or whatnot. But anyway, now I will take digital pictures and then just go from there. But this is one that I worked on. I love the swing of the trees, and again, this was one acrylic, and it's I also use a little bit of charcoal in it, and it's layer over layer again. We are now looking at my garden, and I've gotten a lot of pleasure out of this through the years, and it's also been an inspiration for me for a lot of my work. So I just wanted you to have a chance to see this. And we're going to move around now and go to my upstairs studio, where you can see how I've been influenced by some of this and other things that have influenced me. Welcome to my studio. This is my home away from home. And I usually work with larger pieces up here, but lately I've been doing some smaller things as well. I want to show you the one that I did most recently. I really struggled with this piece, and I used my camera to take pictures of something. So you can see, this is a rose from the garden. And what I did at first, when I was painting this, I used the whole garden. And I looked at it and I decided it's too much, it's not saying anything. So I gradually began to eliminate. And what I do that, is to take some collage pieces, place them over some of the shapes until I see what I want to get rid of, and so on. And after doing that, I went back into the painting, and I will bring it to you. And I call this one the rose. Can you see that? And it almost has sort of a surreal feeling to me, with this large piece up here. And I eliminated all this so that I could have the movement coming down and going around, and showing some of the water drops on the leaves as well. And I needed a few little color pieces coming out of the dark every once in a while. I could probably go into this and work on it another few months. So let's go around and see other things now. This painting is called Cactus and Water Lilies. It's a triptych, and this one I did probably in the 90s. And it's also yin-yang, and it shows how this is the masculine, obviously, here, and on the other end, and the feminine on the middle. And then I've used the patterning inside to hold it all together. And I really had a lot of fun doing this one. It's one of my favorite pieces. As you can see, the paintings hanging here are from different painting, a different series. The one over here I did up in Northern California in the woods, and it was foggy, and I loved the feeling of the fog, the mist. This particular one was also in Hacienda. It was through the woods there and very dark, and I started to focus on different types of things. Branches, you can see from some of these drawings that I've done, the branches and the feeling, the kind of mysterious sort of a mood that it creates. These are more recent charcoal drawings that I've done. These were also done from Hacienda, and I've enjoyed working with this and trying to get a feeling of just the the mood from that particular area where I was, and the feeling of working with charcoal was so refreshing for a change. This one I was involved with the light, having it with a completely different effect, where the background is sort of a mystery in its own, and it creates a different sort of a feeling. A charcoal portrait of myself as a woman of the Bible. This is Rachel at the well. Next to it is a recent painting that I did, and I combined charcoal, pastel, and acrylic. So I had a lot of fun experimenting, mixing up these different materials together. When I was working with this one and others of that particular period, I was very involved with shadows. And that was what I was striving for, and you can see how it works in here. And the reflections in the back, as well as the actual subject matter itself, and it becomes the subject down here as well with the shadows. A painting that I was inspired to do. This was something in the desert where I just saw a lot of unimportant little bits of nature, and I wanted to see what I could do with it. And I broke it up into, as you can see, little sections, different colors, so it becomes something very different. It's almost like pointillism in a way, but it isn't. But it's, I liked what happened. Something that was very conventional became something that was pretty abstract. On one of my walks up the hill, I noticed this little flower among the dark leaves, and I photographed it, took it back to the studio, and wanted to make this a very important little flower. So it became kind of regal in its own way, as against all the darkness around it. Okay, we're now in my downstairs studio, and you'll see works from different periods, different time zones. A little bit on the top there above the cabinet clouds that I did again in Costa Rica. The figure below, the elder lady dancing, that was on a cruise ship, and I doing a series of older people who are surviving. This is a new painting that I did. It's called Georgia Peach, and she's a Texan, but her name is Georgia, and I took a photograph of her, and then I changed the whole concept so it was inside, outside as well. A colorful sunset from Arizona. The skies there are so beautiful. And looking around, the two little ones above are from the Canadian Rockies, up in one of the lakes. And above that, you will see one again going back to Arizona. It's called Is Yesterday Today Tomorrow? In other words, does the violence ever stop? I had a wonderful Dalmatian named Chip and did a series of paintings on him. They've never been shown. And here he is in a few different places. Some of my earlier work, going back to the 60s and 70s, I was working in a very flat way, simple shapes, and not putting in detail. Though I did a whole series of work at that particular time. And then as I kept going through the years, my work became more involved, more detailed, and so on. In Arizona again, this is a combination of watercolor and pastel. And I think I had a yearning for the old time when there was still a romantic part of the West. And this particular piece is my friend Hal, who has aged, and I call him the urban cowboy. And I want to thank you all for coming to my studio. It was a real pleasure. And do come again. And my website, if you're interested, is patberger.com. Thank you again.